For years now, Mexico has placed the blame of its high levels of gun violence squarely on the firearms ownership in the United States. Mexico has even gone as far as to sue U.S. firearms manufacturers, claiming that the trafficking of guns across the border is the cause for much of Mexico's violence problem. I'm here to tell you that's just simply not the case. Today we're going to get into how Mexico has a cartel problem and not an American gun problem. Hey guys, I'm Tiffany and you're watching One in the Chamber, the show that helps you become a better gun rights activist. And before we get into this video, I just want to take a second to let you know about GOA's annual convention goals. The Gun Owners Advocacy and Leadership Summit is set to be held August 9th through 10th of this year in Knoxville, Tennessee. Come out and visit with some of your favorite manufacturers and participate in activism training and hear from the top voices in the Second Amendment community. And the best part, it is free for GOA members. So sign up today using the link in the description. And now back to the video. For years, anti-gun politicians, gun control activists, and the country of Mexico itself has pushed the false claim that Mexico's violence problem is perpetuated by trafficking of guns across the US border. And first, let me get something straight for all of the anti-gun groups doing their opposition research right now. We're not claiming that firearms trafficking on the southern border doesn't happen. What we're saying is that the pipeline of firearms from the United States doesn't significantly contribute to Mexico's violence problem in the way that Mexico claims. In fact, Mexico's claims about gun trafficking are, in our view, a smokescreen to mask Mexico's problems with corruption, cartels, and more. Mexico claims to believe that the U.S.'s Second Amendment and high rate of civilian gun ownership help to harm the cartel, who in turn traffic fentanyl and other drugs across the southern border, killing Americans. Mexico is so dedicated to this narrative that they've even filed a $10 billion lawsuit against U.S. firearm manufacturers, claiming that companies like Smith & Wesson actively market to the cartels and turn a blind eye to the smuggling on the southern border. If you're interested in learning about that lawsuit, we've covered it on this channel previously, and I'll leave a link to that video in the description. Of course, the attorney representing Mexico just happens to be the former chief counsel for Brady, a gun control group. So yes, this claim that without tackling the gun smugglers on the border, we'll never be able to stop the armament of dangerous cartels just isn't true. In fact, according to a fantastic new article by Todd Bensman that I will link in the description of this video, the Mexican cartels have for years now equipped themselves with military weaponry stolen or bought from Mexico's own corrupt military and from the armories of corrupt militaries in Central and South America. Much of the equipment recovered after these cartels fight with themselves or the Mexican government could not have been bought in any gun store in the United States. Let's take a look at some of what's been recovered. There's World War II era German MG-34 fully automatic, belt-fed machine guns, 40mm rifle grenade launchers, 50 cal machine guns, shown here on a video with two cartel groups engaging with each other. And speaking of machine guns, M134 miniguns have been turning up in the hands of the cartel since at least 2018. And of course, there's Israeli Galil Ace rifles, made in Colombia and used as the official rifle of Colombian and Mexican law enforcement. So I wonder how the cartel got those in their hands. And of course, explosives. Recent reports indicate the use of landmines and drone bombs in use by the cartels. Mexican government helicopters have been shot down by cartel-owned RPGs, and that's just the lightest of their surface-to-air missile inventory. According to a report from USA Today, Mexican authorities seized the heat-guided FIM-92 Stinger missile and a FIM-43 Red-Eye laser-guided missile and dozens of other rocket launchers. And, maybe worst of all, from the same report, a cartel member claimed to be training other members on the FGM-148 Javelin missile system. And later in the article, an anonymous official from the Mexican government said that authorities had confiscated 2 javelins from cartels and a similar weapon had secretly been used against high-profile Mexican government officials. For those who don't know, the Javelin is the most advanced man-portable missile system in the world. You might recognize it from games like Call of Duty and Battlefield. That doesn't look like something that you can just walk into a gun store in the US and buy. So that raises the question, if not the US, where are the Mexican cartels getting their weapons? Well, in the case of the Javelin missiles, the USA Today article did provide some clarity. During the Iraq War, the DoD lost track of 35 javelins. Some turned up later in the possession of ISIS, and one was found at a Libyan warlord's base. It's likely that those and others that militaries around the world have lost or have been stolen could wind up in the hands of the cartel, especially since the cartels are well funded by drug money and can certainly afford top-of-the-line equipment. But what about weapons other than missiles? Small arms, things that could plausibly come up from a gun shop in the US. Wouldn't it be easier to smuggle arms to Mexico than to steal from the Mexican military? Well, that's where you'd be wrong. See, there's a lot of evidence that corrupt military officials just sell weapons to the cartels. Take this example where leaked emails revealed numerous instances where the military offered to support the cartel in different ways. In the first instance, a military member offered grenades for sale to the cartel and ended up selling quite a few of them. Another offered to sell tactical equipment, night vision goggles, bulletproof vests, information about rival gang members, and even information on where certain government officials were located. And on top of that, another high-ranking military official sold about 7,000 rounds of ammunition to the cartel. He also offered to help the cartel by locating a local attorney general it was trying to assassinate. The email leaks also revealed that members of what is known as a quick reaction team were protecting members of the new generation Jalisco cartel leaders. Essentially, Mexican special forces were protecting senior-level cartel members. According to the report, when asked about this leak, the Mexican president downplayed it. Well, the US isn't putting up with that anymore. On February 28, 2025, it was reported that Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, quoted, urged Mexican officials to address collusion between their country's government and violent criminal organizations. But corruption in the Mexican military and government isn't the only place the cartels get their weapons. In 2011, it was reported that the Honduran military supplied weapons to the cartels. This was later confirmed in the leaked Defense Intelligence Agency report that serial numbers from light anti-tank weapons recovered matched those sold from the United States to the Honduran army. Guatemala has had a hand in arming the cartels as well. The nation admitted that its military armed and trained cartels like the Zetas. This admission came after police in Guatemala raided a training camp run by the Zetas, where they found a stash of nearly 600 grenades, 11 machine guns, and 5,000 rounds of ammunition, all stored in boxes that were labeled Guatemalan Military Industry. And that's not to mention the sales of weapons from the US to the Mexican government themselves. The US has sold more guns to Mexico than to Iraq. And of course, there's a little operation by the ATF called Fast and Furious, but maybe that's a story for another time. This is why we're saying that the violence problem in Mexico is not new and certainly not caused by gun groups in the US. Check out this report from 13 years ago.
Well, deadly violence in the Mexican resort city of Acapulco over the weekend. When it was all said and done, 2 police officers, 3 suspected drug cartel gunmen, and 2 other people were dead. While the Obama administration blames the violence in Mexico on U.S. gun stores, State Department cables point to someone else. And if you look at this video from a recent Mexican police raid in Juarez, you see grenades and launchers and fully automatic machine guns, items you simply can't buy at a mom-and-pop gun store. So where are they coming from? William Lajeunesse is live in Los Angeles with more on America's Third War. William?
We know publicly Presidents Obama and Calderon of Mexico both blame the drug violence on guns that are bought here that then cross the U.S.-Mexican border illegally. But privately, or what cables show and what they don't talk about are the legal sales of guns to the government of Mexico that fuel the cartel violence. U.S. and Mexican officials often publicly blame American gun stores as the source of weapons used by the cartels. But privately, they tell another story of guns sold legally through the U.S. State Department to the Mexican government, which corrupt cops then funnel to the traffickers.
We in the gun industry have known from day one that, the allegations that the preponderance of the weapons came from sales from gun stores like this one was just totally not true.
In 2009, Mexico bought $177 million of U.S.-made weapons, exceeding sales to Iraq and Afghanistan. That number includes 20 million in semi and fully automatic firearms.
Most of the M16s, for instance, were legally sold to the Mexican government and disappeared.
State Department cables obtained by WikiLeaks confirmed that fear. Quote, U.S. law enforcement has fair reason to worry a number of weapons simply disappear. Another says, quote, rogue elements of the Guatemalan military is selling weapons to narcos. This confidential informant says weapons he sees in Mexico don't come from mom and pop stores.
The majority of the weapons that are being used by cartel and that are being recovered are in fact military grade weapons. They're coming out of excess supplies that the United States has given to other countries.
So in 2009 alone, 13,000 handguns were purchased by Mexico from Italy, 5,000 assault weapons from Germany, thousands of rifles from Portugal and Brazil. The bottom line is, once those guns are exported, it is out of our hands, and the State Department basically says then it becomes an issue of corruption in Mexico, and those guns are going from police and military to the cartels.
So there you have it. Mexico's violence problem is not fueled by gun shops and the civilian gun market in the United States. But good luck telling the Mexican president that. In response to Trump designating Mexican cartels as foreign terror organizations, Claudia Sheinbaum, the Mexican president, proposed reforming the Constitution to go after so-called foreign gun smugglers. Why not work with the United States to stop the cartels? And still, the narrative pushed by the Mexican government continues to be that a majority of guns recovered from the cartels come from the U.S. gun shops. But how can that be true when so many of these weapons can't be bought by civilians in the U.S. in the first place? Well, that article I mentioned earlier from Todd Bensman sheds some light on why that may be. In the article, Bensman points to a 2021 Government Accountability Office report titled Firearms Trafficking. U.S. efforts to disrupt gun smuggling into Mexico would benefit from additional data and analysis. The report shows that 70% of firearms submitted for tracing recovery by the Mexican government came from the U.S. But what this report also says, and what gun control groups and the Mexican government fail to mention, is that neither ICE nor ATF can get any data about the thousands of other firearms recovered in Mexico. This is because Mexico's Attorney General's office controls the trace requests through a database portal connected to U.S. agencies that determine if firearms are U.S. made and which stores sold them. This means that Mexico can choose only to send the American samples they suspect come from U.S. gun shops and never forward the military-grade weapon they routinely size and showcase at news conferences. That, of course, overstates the percentage of weapons coming from the U.S. The GAO report acknowledges this fact by saying only Mexican federal agencies and state attorney general's offices do not have E-Trace accounts, because the Mexican government had restricted E-Trace access to the federal attorney general's office. By centralizing all of the data to just the Mexican attorney general's office, Mexico can control what data gets sent to the U.S. This means that there is no reliable evidence supporting the claim that most of the cartel's weapons come from gun shops north of the border, since the data is selectively sent over by the Mexican AG. And if you need any more evidence that Mexico has a corruption problem, consider this. On October 16, 2024, the Mexican government official who was heralded as the architect of Mexico's war on drugs was sentenced to 38 years in prison in the United States for taking bribes and aiding drug traffickers. So, while Mexican officials continue to claim that the U.S. firearms industry is responsible for the country's gun violence, we know the fact of the matter is that Mexico has a bigger problem with corruption. That problem arms the criminal cartels, allows them to organize, assassinate their opponents in the government, and collude to continue to grow unopposed by law enforcement. That's it for today, guys. I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.